Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're looking at something that should be particularly interesting to our UPSC aspirants out there,
Mm-hmm.
especially those of you who are focusing on international relations.
Okay.
But to be honest with you, this is going to be an eye-opener. No
Yeah.
matter who you are, if you're curious about the forces shaping India's economic landscape,
Right.
we're going deep into the world of Indian rubber
Okay.
and using an insightful article from Business Line as our guide.
Interesting.
So are you ready to get those wheels turning?
I am indeed. Let's dive in.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So one of the things that makes this topic so fascinating is that it really shows how these international events
Mm-hmm.
can have like a direct impact on certain industries,
Yeah.
even industries that seem at first glance to be purely domestic.
Absolutely. And this is a perfect case study in that.
Right, exactly. And that leads us to the European Union's deforestation regulation, or EUDR.
Okay.
Now, this isn't just some like obscure EU policy.
Yeah. All right.
This has the potential to really like reshape global trade.
Yep.
And India's rubber industry is right in the crosshairs.
Uh-huh.
So essentially what the EUDR does is it prohibits
Right.
the sale of products
Mm-hmm.
in the EU
Yeah.
that are linked to deforestation.
Yes. Yep.
So for any country that wants to export to Europe,
Mm-hmm.
showing a clean supply chain is absolutely non-negotiable.
It's a requirement now. Yeah.
And this is where things get interesting for India,
Yeah.
a major rubber exporter.
Mm-hmm.
It raises this crucial question, though.
Okay.
Could the EUDR be a sneaky way of protectionism,
Oh, interesting.
like a non-tariff barrier,
Uh-huh.
dressed up in like environmental clothing?
Yeah. That's a concern that many in India share.
Exactly.
It really kind of puts a spotlight on that delicate balance,
Yeah,
between promoting sustainable practices, which of course we want to do,
of course.
but also ensuring fair trade practices,
Right.
especially for developing economies.
Yeah.
Industries like rubber are absolutely essential
Yeah.
for growth and for livelihoods.
Absolutely. So how is India responding to this challenge?
Right.
Are they just reacting to EU pressure?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there like a more strategic play at hand?
Well, India's response has been pretty proactive and honestly quite clever.
Okay.
They've introduced the Indian Sustainable Natural Rubber Initiative,
Okay.
or ISNR.
ISNR.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
So is it just about checking boxes to comply with EU regulations?
Yeah.
Or could this be a game changer for India's rubber industry?
It's definitely more strategic than just compliance, I think.
Okay.
The ISNR focuses on traceability and certification,
Okay.
allowing India to really prove that its rubber meets EU standards.
Right.
But what I think is really smart is it positions India
Yeah.
as a leader in sustainable rubber production.
So it's not just about mitigating risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's about seizing a competitive advantage in the global market.
Exactly. You're getting ahead of the curve.
Right.
Consumers and governments are increasingly prioritizing sustainability.
They are.
And by proactively meeting those demands,
Right.
India can actually differentiate itself and potentially even command a premium price for its rubber.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even with the ISNR in place, India's rubber industry still has some internal challenges.
It does.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
These vast untapped rubber holdings
Yes.
and this absentee landlord issue.
Yeah, it's a major hurdle. It's like having a treasure trove of resources, but you're missing the key.
Right.
And that's what's happening with these plantations that are just sitting there underutilized.
It sounds like such a missed opportunity,
It is.
both for the economy and for the individual growers.
Yeah.
So how is India addressing this?
Well, this is where this innovative platform called INR Connect comes in.
Okay.
Think of it like a matchmaking service.
Okay.
But for rubber plantations,
Oh.
it connects growers who have these untapped holdings
Mm-hmm.
with individuals or companies
Mm-hmm.
who are interested in revitalizing them.
So it's not just about like throwing money at the problem.
Right.
It's about connecting resources and expertise
Exactly. Targeted intervention.
in a targeted way.
Yeah.
So by bringing these neglected plantations back online,
Mm-hmm.
INR Connect could address the price drops,
Yes.
lower production costs,
Yeah.
and ultimately increase India's overall rubber output.
That's the goal.
So we've got ISNR tackling those international standards
Right.
and INR Connect revitalizing domestic production.
Yes.
Are there any other government initiatives that are aimed at bolstering this really crucial industry?
Absolutely. The National Rubber Policy of 2019
Okay.
lays out this ambitious roadmap,
Right.
with goals like increasing domestic production to 2 million tons by 2030.
2 million tons.
Yeah.
That's a big jump.
It is.
What are some of the key strategies that are outlined in this policy?
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
One focus is on making sure there's a reliable domestic supply of raw rubber
Okay.
because India's got these growing industrial needs.
Right.
Another is raising the quality standards
Yeah.
to make Indian rubber more competitive globally.
So it's about building a self-reliant industry that can also compete on that global stage.
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot,
Yeah.
you know?
And this is really where the UPSC relevance shines through.
Yes.
Because understanding this interplay between global regulations like the EUDR,
Uh-huh.
domestic initiatives like INR Connect, and these comprehensive policies like the National Rubber Policy is key
It is.
for anybody analyzing India's economic and geopolitical landscape.
I completely agree. These aren't just isolated events.
Right.
They're all part of this bigger puzzle.
Right.
You know, and it's a puzzle that our aspiring diplomats and policymakers need to be able to solve.
Absolutely. We've laid a great foundation.
We have.
But there's so much more to unpack.
There is.
So stay with us
Please do.
as we delve deeper into India's rubber revolution.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into India's rubber industry. We've been exploring how global trends and domestic policies are shaping this fascinating sector. And as you mentioned, it's particularly relevant for those UPSC aspirants out there, especially those who are focusing on international relations.
Yeah, it really is incredible how something like rubber, seemingly simple,
Right.
can give us such a deep insight into India's economic journey and its evolving role on the world stage.
Absolutely. And to fully appreciate the complexity of this industry, I think it's important to understand the historical context.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in what's happening right now,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing the backstory can really help us understand those forces that are at play.
Yeah.
So how did India become a rubber powerhouse in the first place? Was it always a major player?
Well, surprisingly, rubber isn't actually native to India.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was introduced by the British back in the late 19th century.
So pretty recently.
Relatively speaking, yeah. They were trying to replicate the success of the rubber plantations
Okay.
that they had in Southeast Asia.
So another colonial legacy.
Exactly.
Much like tea,
Uh-huh.
they recognize the potential of India's tropical climate,
Mm-hmm.
especially in regions like Kerala.
Precisely. Perfect conditions for rubber cultivation.
And it sounds like it didn't take long for that rubber cultivation to take root.
You could say that. Yeah. By the early 20th century, India had become a significant player in the global rubber market.
From colonial introduction to global player,
Mm-hmm.
that's quite a journey.
It is.
But I imagine that path hasn't always been easy.
No, it hasn't.
What are some of the major challenges that India's rubber industry has faced over the years?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the volatility of global rubber prices.
Okay.
They're influenced by so many different factors.
Right.
Global demand, production levels in other countries, speculation in commodity markets. It's a lot to keep track of. And when those prices drop, it can have a devastating impact on Indian rubber growers.
It really highlights the vulnerability of industries that are tied to these global commodities.
Yeah.
Their livelihoods are at the mercy of forces that are completely beyond their control.
Exactly. And on top of that, you have competition from synthetic rubber,
Oh, right.
which is a petroleum-derived alternative,
Sure.
and it's often cheaper.
Okay, so that puts pressure on the natural rubber producers.
It does. India's in a constant race to stay competitive.
It's like a never-ending innovation game.
It is adapt or get left behind.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are the internal challenges that we've already talked about.
Right.
The untapped potential, the need to boost productivity,
Yeah.
and meeting those increasingly stringent quality standards.
It's this balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
Managing those internal hurdles while also navigating
Right.
the unpredictable currents of the global market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, despite these challenges, India's rubber industry has shown this remarkable resilience.
Okay.
It's constantly evolving, adapting
That's good.
to both global trends and domestic realities.
And that's a really important lesson, I think, for our UPSC aspirants.
Absolutely.
Understanding how those global and local forces
Mm-hmm.
interact to shape an industry's trajectory.
Yeah, it's not just about memorizing facts.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of it all.
Okay, so we have a pretty solid grasp of the historical context.
I think so.
Let's delve deeper into these initiatives
Okay.
that are aimed at propelling India's rubber industry forward.
Yes. Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
We've talked about ISNR and INR Connect,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's worth exploring how they actually operate on the ground.
Great idea. It's one thing to discuss these policies in abstract terms, but understanding the practical application really brings it all to life.
So let's start with ISNR, the Indian Sustainable Natural Rubber Program. It's India's answer to the EU's deforestation regulation,
Yeah,
showing their commitment to these sustainable practices.
right. It's not just lip service.
Right.
It's about proving it.
So imagine you have a rubber plantation in Kerala
Mm-hmm.
that wants to export to the EU.
Okay.
Under ISNR,
Hmm.
it undergoes this rigorous assessment
Yeah,
to make sure that it meets all these sustainability criteria.
that's right. No deforestation, responsible land use, fair labor practices, the whole 9 yards.
It's like an eco-audit, their entire operation.
And if they meet the standards, they get certified under ISNR,
Okay.
which acts like a passport
Okay.
for their rubber to enter that EU market.
So buyers know that rubber with the ISNR seal
Yeah,
is sustainably sourced,
right.
doesn't contribute to deforestation.
Yeah, and it's a mark of credibility.
Right.
Fosters trust and could even lead to a premium price.
But ISNR goes beyond just certification, right?
It does.
It's about empowering those growers.
Yes, definitely. ISNR also includes training programs
Okay.
for the rubber growers themselves
Right.
on sustainable practices.
So they're learning new techniques.
Exactly. They're learning how to improve their yields
Okay.
while also protecting the environment.
So it's this holistic approach,
It is.
merging compliance with capacity building,
Yes,
which benefits the industry and the planet.
absolutely. A win-win.
Now let's switch gears to INR Connect,
Okay.
which tackles that domestic challenge of untapped rubber holdings.
Right. It's estimated that a significant portion of India's rubber plantations are just sitting there underutilized.
Wow.
So INR Connect aims to bridge that gap
Okay.
between those absentee landlords and individuals or companies that are interested in revitalizing those neglected plantations.
It's almost like playing matchmaker, right?
Yeah.
It's connecting those who have land but they don't have the resources or the time
Right.
to those who have the expertise and the willingness to invest.
Exactly. And it's more than just making connections.
Yeah.
INR Connect provides this whole support package, offering technical guidance, access to financing, even marketing assistance.
So it's a one-stop shop
It is.
for turning those untapped resources into productive assets.
That's the goal.
That's a brilliant approach.
And the benefits are huge.
Yeah.
You bring these holdings back into production, you increase rubber output,
Right.
you boost rural employment,
Uh-huh.
and you strengthen the whole domestic rubber industry.
So we have ISNR addressing those international concerns.
Yeah.
INR Connect revitalizing domestic production.
Right.
Clearly, India is taking this industry very seriously.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the overarching framework provided by the National Rubber Policy of 2019.
Right.
It's a multi-pronged strategy with some ambitious goals.
Right. We talked about increasing domestic production,
Uh-huh.
promoting value-added manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
What other aspects does the National Rubber Policy address?
Well, a key area is research and development.
Okay.
The government is investing in developing new high-yielding rubber varieties that are more resistant to diseases, pests, and even climate change.
So it's about future-proofing the industry.
It is, making sure it's viable and competitive in the long term.
And another focus is on shifting from being just an exporter of raw rubber
Right.
to becoming a hub for processing and manufacturing rubber products.
Exactly. Adding value to that raw material,
Okay.
creating jobs, boosting the overall economy.
So the policy encourages growth in industries like tire manufacturing
Yes,
and the production of other rubber-based products.
exactly. Footwear, gloves,
Yeah.
industrial components.
So you're building a complete ecosystem around rubber.
We are. It's a comprehensive approach.
This is incredible. We've covered so much ground.
We have.
You know, from those colonial origins to these really cutting-edge initiatives, it's clear that India's rubber industry is dynamic
It is.
and constantly evolving.
That's right. And there's still more to uncover.
Okay.
Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll examine those geopolitical implications of this seemingly humble commodity.
I'm looking forward to it. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into India's rubber industry. We've explored its history, its challenges, and the really innovative ways that India is shaping its future. But now I think it's time to zoom out
okay.
and look at the bigger picture. the geopolitical implications of this often overlooked commodity.
Yeah,
And this is especially important for those UPSC aspirants out there
absolutely.
who really need to grasp that complex dance between economics, politics, and those international relations.
It is fascinating how something as seemingly mundane as rubber can become so geopolitically significant.
Right.
And India, with its unique position as both a major producer and importer of rubber, really occupies a very interesting space on the global stage.
Right. We talked about India's efforts to meet its domestic demand
Hmm.
while also engaging in that global rubber market.
Yeah.
What are the geopolitical implications of that balancing act?
Well, for one thing, consider India's reliance on Southeast Asian countries. Right.
Like Indonesia and Thailand,
Hmm.
for a portion of its rubber imports.
Right.
This creates a web of interdependence.
Okay.
It adds a strategic dimension to those trade relationships.
So it's not just about economics.
No.
It's about fostering those alliances
Yes.
and navigating those regional dynamics.
And it becomes even more interesting when you factor in other major players like China
Right.
competing for resources and influence in that global rubber market.
It's a complex game.
Is.
High stakes.
And then you have the EU,
Yes.
a major market for Indian rubber,
Uh-huh.
but also setting those sustainability standards.
Right. With regulations like the EUDR.
It's a tightrope walk
It is.
for India, balancing economic interests with compliance
Yeah.
to these evolving global norms.
But as we've seen, India's playing this game strategically,
Right.
using initiatives like the ISNR program to really show their commitment to sustainability.
So turning a potential challenge into an opportunity.
Exactly. By meeting those standards proactively,
Right.
India is enhancing its reputation on the global stage
Mm.
and potentially attracting buyers who are specifically looking for ethical and environmentally sound sources.
Oh, aligning economic goals
Mhm.
with those global values.
It's a smart strategy in today's world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But beyond trade, there's another layer to this whole geopolitical puzzle,
Okay.
that strategic importance of rubber as a material.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Rubber isn't just out tires for cars.
Right.
It's critical in industries like defense
Okay.
and aerospace. Think about aircraft components, military vehicles,
Okay.
countless other applications that are essential for national security.
So a secure and reliable supply of rubber is really important,
It is.
not just for economic stability,
Right.
but for strategic autonomy.
Exactly. When you look at it from that perspective, India's rubber industry becomes much more than just plantations and factories.
Right.
It's vital for their national security and their global positioning.
It's amazing how something we often take for granted can have such profound implications.
It is.
And this really highlights why these deep dives are so valuable
I agree.
for our UPSC aspirant.
Yeah.
It's about making those connections,
Right.
seeing beyond the
Not
surface,
peeling back those layers.
and understanding the many facets of seemingly simple things.
It's about developing that critical thinking,
Yes.
the ability to analyze how these seemingly disparate elements like economics, environmental concerns, geopolitics all converge.
It's fascinating.
It is.
So we've gone from those lush rubber plantations in Kerala
We have
to the global stage of international trade and all those strategic maneuvers.
a whirlwind tour.
It's been an incredible journey,
It has.
exploring India's rubber industry,
Uncovering those complexities.
its challenges,
Mhm.
and its potential.
I hope our listeners, especially those preparing for the UPSC,
Yes,
have gained some valuable insights from our deep dive.
me too.
It's a great example of how a seemingly niche topic can provide such important lessons in understanding India's economic and geopolitical landscape.
Absolutely. And a huge thank you to Business Line for that insightful article that really formed the basis of our exploration today.
Yes. Thank you, Business Line.
If you're interested in learning more about this fascinating topic, be sure to check out their website. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and ignited your passion for learning. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow knowledge seekers.
Spread the knowledge.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds engaged.